So we're going to move into the main part of this morning's section, all right? So I'm going to introduce to you the first speaker of the day. So Rajiv Peshwaria is the CEO of the iCliff Leadership and Governance Center in Malaysia. He's also the author of Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders, and is a regular writer for Forbes and Mint Wall Street Journal. Rajiv has an extensive global experience in leadership development with a particular focus on developing and delivering on business strategy. He has been the Chief Learning Officer for companies like Coca-Cola and Morgan Stanley, and has formerly held senior positions at American Express and Goldman Sachs. He also provides coaching and consulting and advisory services globally. Rajiv is a sought-after international speaker and has been widely featured in the international media platforms such as Bloomberg TV and Radio, the Harvard Business Review, CNBC, and the Times of India. So it's a real privilege and a real honor that he agreed to be our speaker today. Please welcome Rajiv Peshwaria.
Thank you, Sangeeta, for that very, very warm welcome. Don't believe any word of it. The first time I realized I had an accent is when I moved to the US in the mid-90s. And the situation went something like this. Your chit-chat reminded me of this incident. So one of my direct reports in my brand new team back then said, I'm very nervous. I have to present to senior management today, and what if I get stuck? And I said, don't worry if you get stuck. I'll pass you a chit. And she said, well, I'm going to get enough of that from those guys anyway. Don't give me any more of it. You know what she was talking about, some other four-letter word, because they did not understand the word chit. Anyway, so just a little thing I remembered. My pleasure and privilege to be here amongst such an august group today. Thank you very much for listening. I probably have more material than I can cover in the 45, 50 minutes that I have, so I'll go as far as I can. And if you want to chat after that, over the break and things like that, I'm here for the next couple of days, eager and hungry to learn from you as much if you'll learn something from this. So let me go ahead. It was in 1995 that I first, on my trip to the U.S., when I attended my first meeting on HR transformation. So the company I worked for at that time was American Express, and a group of HR people met in New York and said, let's talk about HR transformation. And the buzz at that time was, HR needs to be a strategic business partner. We need to get a better seat at the table. And it's 2012, and we're still talking about exactly the same thing. And every week, somewhere in the world, a similar meeting is kicked off by the head of HR or by the CEO saying, we need to make HR more of a strategic business partner. I know I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. Many of you, if not everybody in this room, have attended such meetings. Many of you are in the middle of that transformation. Some of you have already finished that transformation and now looking at what went right, what went wrong. It's still the same. Why is this whole idea of getting a better seat at the table for HR still an elusive dream for a lot of people? So what I'm going to give you are my 2 cents worth of what I think the problem is and what we as a community, HR community, need to do. I'm going to talk a lot about the ideas that are presented in Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders, but the book was written more for the actual line person rather than for the HR person, but I'm going to borrow some ideas from there and talk to you about it. So let me start by stealing shamelessly from YouTube, because we all live in the social media world, and many of you would have you seen this video called Did You Know on YouTube? How many people have seen it? Okay, so only some of you. All right. Let me share some of the things that I learned from that video. So they're saying that the top 10 in-demand jobs in 2010 did not exist in 2004. Yeah? Translation, we are currently preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist using technologies that not yet have been invented. The amount of technical information available doubles every 4 years. Translation, for students taking a 4-year engineering degree, half of what they learn in the first year is already outdated by the 3rd year. If Facebook were a country, it would be bigger than all of Europe and 3 times the size of the US. Translation, online communities are becoming more powerful than the biggest countries in the world today. You have this one here. It took radio 38 years to reach a population of 50 million, and it took Facebook only 2 years to reach. China will soon become the world's largest English-speaking country, which means 300 million people will be competing for the jobs that you and I are competing for right now because we believe that we speak English. Yeah? India has more honor kids than America has kids. Honor kids are people gifted in talented education programs in the US. So basically, the world is flat and changing faster than ever before. You already knew that, right? What are CEOs and senior management sort of going through in this kind of rapid change? They're basically worried about three things. Strategy gets outdated before it is formulated. Yeah? Those were days when we used to have 3-year and 5-year strategic plans, and we used to say, plan the work and work the plan. Those days are over. Today, before the ink dries on the strategic plan, the strategy is already outdated. Organizational rigidity slows organizations down. Today, some of the biggest organizations are built by 2 people in a garage. And some of us are still using, I don't want to offend anybody, a system of job evaluation and job points based to determine compensation that was designed in the 70s, in the manufacturing era. Culture is the only competitive advantage left. People can copy your strategy, people can copy your organization, but nobody can take your culture away from you if you've done the right thing in creating the right culture. So those are the 3 challenges that CEOs and senior management are struggling today more than ever before in the kind of change and the rapid change that we're talking about. Does that make sense? Nothing that you don't already know, correct? Yet, what's the average opinion about HR? I love my HR guy or gal, but boy, do I hate HR. Right? Unfortunately, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine in the US, wrote an article where she coined this phrase almost 15 years ago. It's still true. Right? Question is, how can HR be more relevant in this flat and uncertain world? We talk about strategic HR all the time. It's been enough time that we've been talking about strategic HR. What does that really boil down to? So here's my 2 cents. How can HR be more relevant? Well, by taking control of the 3 levers of sustainable growth. What I call the brains, the bones, and the nerves of a business. The brains of a business is the strategy and the vision. Mission, vision, strategy, that's what we call the brains of the business. The bones of the business is the organizational architecture. Do you have the right people at the right place? Do you have the right internal policies and systems and structures? And the nerves is the culture. Your human body needs all 3 systems to fire succinctly at full capacity if you want to live healthy life and run the marathon at 95. If one of those systems is not working, the human body begins to collapse. Exactly the same is the situation with the business. The brain decides where the business is going, and the execution happens in the bones and nerves, right? What HR needs to do is take control of these 3 pillars of sustainable growth and actually help senior management in shaping them. Because our research says that senior management teams that spend 80 to 90% of their time proactively shaping and maintaining these 3 pillars drive long-term sustainable growth. Because everybody faces the same market conditions in the industry, right? Why is it that some companies succeed more than others? It's those senior management teams that focus on these 3 things proactively. Nothing new about this either. The only thing that's different today is that today these 3 things are not periodic activities anymore. You've got to focus on these on a regular basis proactively. Like I said, gone are the days of 3-year strategic plans. You've got to think strategy every quarter, if not more. Is it still relevant? Right? Organization structure is not something you can abdicate to HR anymore. You've got to work with HR, and you've got to keep it nimble enough that you can make changes every month if you need to, because that's what the market is demanding. How do you create organizational structure changes in a quick way, as often as needed, without creating unnecessary stress in the organization? That's what HR needs to figure out. Yeah? So those are the things that we need to figure out. I'd like to talk a little bit about all those 3 and challenge a little bit of conventional wisdom in terms of the role that HR plays. You might agree with some of it, you might not agree with some of it, but please respect it. It's my 2 cents. At least we'll have a debate, right? So let's look. How do you know if senior management is doing a good job in setting direction? The people that know, first of all, that the strategy has either become outdated or it's not communicated properly, the first people to find out are the employees, right? So the way to find out if senior management is effective in setting up strategy and communicating strategy is to ask employees to rate these 5 statements on a 1 to 5 scale, where 5 is strongly agree and 1 is strongly disagree. Yeah? And instantly you'll know whether something is happening right or not. What can HR do about it? Well, let's help senior management in making sure they get 4s and 5s on these statements. Let's help them formulate a mission and vision that is inspiring emotionally. Let's help them communicate strategy in a way that is not only easy to understand, but gives an emotional connection to the last person standing in the company. And I'll show you in a minute why HR is uniquely positioned to do that. You know, nobody said in any company, hey, you HR, stand outside the boardroom and we'll call you when we need you. Nobody has refused us a seat at the table. Nobody. We have refused ourselves that seat at the table because we don't want to do what is required of us. Unfortunately, that's what I believe. So what I'm going to share with you is a few things that we can do. The first thing, there is a direct connection. Why is widespread understanding and emotional acceptance of vision, mission, and strategy really important? Let me take you through, very quickly, the oldest equation in management science. Q times A equals Z. Anybody's heard this before? Q times A equals Z? It's the oldest management equation. I'm going to share with you some very complex mathematics now. I have an advanced degree in multivariable calculus. So if you don't have such a degree, then you're going to have to pay attention, okay? It's very complex mathematics. Q times A equals effectiveness. Q stands for quality, A stands for acceptance. The first rule, and this you only understand if you understand advanced variable calculus, is this. Anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So even if you have the highest quality on a 1 to 10 scale, but if acceptance is at 0, what's effectiveness? I told you it's complex mathematics, right? Yeah, so stay with me. So that's fact number 1. Fact number 2 is even more complex. Here you need a PhD in mathematics to understand. And that is increasing the lower number in a multiplication equation yields higher results. So typically what happens is, in any company, you know, the strategy or the project plan and all that is solid, but the CEO says, no, I want to see more progress. And the A-type personalities go to work, the engineers and the accountants and everybody goes to work and starts improving the logic and the reasoning and the quality side of the equation to please the big boss. Here's what happens. You start with a quality of 6 and an acceptance of 2. You go to 12, but you forget rule number 2. And boss says you want to have better effectiveness of the strategy, so you start working with the bigger number, right? And you keep doing that, and your effectiveness is now at 18. However, with a PhD in calculus, you would do the reverse, which is you will start at the same place, but you will work with a lower number, and look where effectiveness goes. The point I'm trying to make very simply is that you've got to focus on that A. You have to give people that emotional connection. I know a lot of times when I reveal the second box, people go, huh? Because it is complex math. I understand that. And fact number 3 is the 80-30 rule. All human beings think that they are in the top 30% when it comes to communication skills. Whereas, again, advanced variable calculus will tell you that only 30% of the people can be in the top 30%. Yeah? So a long-winded way of saying emotional connection is really, really important. And HR, because of the nature of what we do, is in the best place to make sure management doesn't take its eyes off the ball in terms of that emotional connection. Let's start with vision and mission. Research says that mission is the reason people come to work, not vision. Vision is, I want to be the number 1 player in the market. Vision says, I want to give 25% return on equity. Vision says that we want to be the most revered company in the world for whatever, right? Or we want to increase shareholder value by this much and that much. That's not why people come to work. People come to work because of the mission, the real core service the company provides, so that I can say, I do this little thing for the world. HR should make sure that every company has a mission like that. And we are uniquely positioned. If we don't feel the emotional connection, chances are our people don't. Let's go up and challenge. So what do I mean by that? A lot of people a lot of companies do a very poor job on strategy, vision, and mission. I'm not making this stuff up. Even in the best companies, 7 out of 8 companies failed to achieve profitable growth, even though 90% of them had business plans. On average, 95% of a company's employees are unaware of and do not understand its strategy. This is Harvard research, global research. Isn't it pathetic? Some 60% of the organizations do not link their financial budgets to strategic priorities. Management meetings. This one is scary, isn't it? And 67% of HR and IT managers reveal that their functional strategies are not aligned with their business and corporate strategies. What do you think of this one? 85% of executive leadership spend less than 1 hour per month discussing strategy. And then they find, they get surprised when they find that, oh my God, my strategy has become outdated. In today's day and age, where the world changes before you can say Jack Robinson, you spend less than an hour a month talking strategy. What are you doing, senior management? The point is, if strategy gets outdated, HR, through the employees, should be the first to know, and that's your opportunity to get that seat back at the table. So you get the point. Let's start with mission. The mission is the emotional connection that people should have. It is the core purpose that the organization exists, not the leadership position you want for your business. That's the vision. So does your organization have that kind of compelling vision? If not, you've got an opportunity to get that seat at the table. Walmart wants to be in the year 2000, this is what they said. Their vision is to become a $125 billion company by the year 2000. Does that motivate the average employee? No, it doesn't. So what was Walmart's mission because of which people come to work with their full energy every morning? To give ordinary people the chance to buy the same things as rich people. Now I feel like I'm doing something for the world. I have reason for being. Yeah? Here's an opportunity. If you don't have such a clear-cut articulation of vision and mission in your company, who are you waiting for permission for? Go and say to the CEO, let's do this. I'll give you another example. Alibaba.com. Their vision to be the world's largest B2B e-commerce company. Again, okay, so what? Make Jack Ma very rich. Make the initial partners very rich. What's it to me? What do I do when I work for Alibaba.com? I make sure it is easy to do business anywhere to enable small and medium-sized enterprises to compete for business and have some power. Now I feel emotionally connected to Alibaba. Last one, eBay. To become the world's largest online market space. Great vision for the founder. But 10 years later, I'm working for eBay. Is that why I come to work? No. I come to work because of something that I can relate to. Does that make sense? It takes very little time to get the senior management team in a room, and in one day of brainstorming that HR can facilitate, you can help them come to this kind of simplicity, but powerful simplicity. Yeah? Now let's move on to strategy. What can HR do to strategy? I have seen umpteen people, very, very smart people, very senior people in this world, who have very, very good strategies. These are people from IIT, IIM, Harvard, Kellogg, you name it, Oxford. Very, very smart brains. And they've got great ideas in terms of strategy, but they are not able to communicate it in a way that people can, A, understand it, B, accept it emotionally. Enter HR. We have an opportunity to help them get to the last person standing in terms of clarity of strategy. Today, we don't need any more complexity. Right? We have enough complexity in our lives, in business lives, personal lives. What HR should be doing is looking for simplicity. Finding simplicity in complexity and making sure there is an emotional connection. How do you do that? Well, strategy should boil down to answering 4 questions. What, who, how, and why. And I'll give you an example, a live example of how somebody in a multinational organization actually worked with their HR in helping answer these 4 questions and taking it to 91,000 employees and created spectacular growth over the next decade doing this. These are very, very simple questions. What do we want to be? Who are our stakeholders? What do we want for each? How and why? How will we make a difference in the world, and why should anybody do business with us? But in all the complexity, in all the brilliance that very smart people have, the simplicity is lost. Enter HR, try to help them to make it simple. I'll give you an example of my own company that I worked for 12 years, first in India and then in the United States, American Express. Harvey Golub was the CEO from 1993 to 2000, and his best friend happened to be his head of HR. And together, they created spectacular growth for this company during Harvey's reign. And let me show you something before I move along. Just give me a second. Okay. Oops. For some reason, that doesn't work. It's not showing. Anyway, I was going to show you the stock chart of American Express. But basically, what was going on is that from 1977 to 1993, American Express stock price was hovering at the bottom between $5 and $7, adjusted for its various stock splits, of course. Between $5 and $7 between 1977 and 1993, and 93 to 2000, it went up like that. And when Harvey ended his tenure as CEO, it was $60. So that spike happened during this time. What did he do? Worked very closely with HR to recommunicate strategy. He did not change American Express's business model. He worked very closely with HR to recommunicate strategy in a way that everybody could understand and emotionally accept it, and then aligned the bones and nerves, the organizational architecture and the culture to that strategy, and that's what happened. And he, even today, attributes it to his partnership with HR. So here's what they did. They answered those 4 questions. They answered, what do we want to be? And they said, we want to be the world's most respected service brand. Anybody from American Express here today? No, okay. So American Express at this time, in the 80s, had lost the respect of the market. They used to be number 1, they became number 3, right? The credit card industry, Visa and Master came from nowhere and started eating American Express's lunch. They had lost the respect because they were charging a premium price in return for a promise of high service, which they were not giving anymore. And the market was punishing them. Ultimately, the board fires the CEO, Jim Robinson, brings in Harvey Golub. Best part is, Harvey Golub keeps the same strategy. High price for high service. So he says, what do we want to be? We want to be the world's most respected service brand. And he went all over the world, he and his leadership team, and did town hall sessions, including in Mumbai, and talked for 2 hours with one slide, and on that slide was that one line, and explaining every word. Let's talk about what respect means. Let's talk about what service means. How did we lose service? How did we lose respect? How are we going to get it back? 2.5 hours. I heard him speak 22 years ago in the Taj ballroom here, and I still remember that speech. Only one slide, only one line. Yeah? And then we want to generate return on equity of 18 to 20%. Is anybody in doubt as to what this company wants to do in the early 90s? When we're just reading these 2 lines. It's crystal clear, isn't it? Okay. Who are our stakeholders? And they said customers, shareholders, and employees. And what do we want to do for each? For customers, we're going to go after high net worth wealthy individuals. We're going to give them superb service, lifestyle choices, etc., etc. For shareholders, 18 to 20% ROE. For employees, the best place to work. And then they asked the question, how and why? They said, let's list the key factors that make up the credit card business. Let's draw a picture of how competition operates on this, and then let's draw a picture of what we are going to do. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to go fast here. What they did is made a list on both sides of this chart. What I'm showing you is a way to communicate strategy all on one page. Yeah? Complicated, complex strategy all on one page. You list all the factors that make up the credit card business. Fees, is it important? Is it not important? Is revenue sharing important or not important? You know, Visa and Master, they share revenue in every point of the transaction because they are just a network. American Express makes money on all points of the transaction because they are their own network, right? Are we going to make money with revolving credit by asking people to pay in installments, or are we going to make money in fees, right, etc.? So they put cards in force is the biggest measure of the credit card business. So those are the factors that make up the business, right? Now they ask the question, how does Visa, Master, Discover, and all these guys play? What importance do they put on what? And they found out that this is what the competitors were doing. Low fees was very important because it was a free card. We're going to make money on interest. So revolving credit is very important to the competitors, right? Revenue sharing, of course, because the banks will issue the card, they will make some money, the processor will make some money, we are a network, we'll make some money. So that's the model. Cards in force is the biggest metric for success. Spend per card, not so important, and acceptability is very, very important. Yeah? Do you understand the strategy of the competition? Even though I've spoken very fast, is that okay? Yeah? Now they ask themselves, what should we do in this market landscape? And they came up with, well, low fees is not important to us. We're going to charge premium fees because we're going to provide high service. Revenue sharing, not important to us. We'll do everything ourselves and make money on every step of the way. Revolving credit, no, we are essentially a charge card, right? Cards in force is important, but not so important. What's important to us is spend per card. Why? Because high net worth wealthy individuals will spend more money per card usage. So therefore, Mr. Shopkeeper, if you accept American Express, you're going to make more money, your sales are going to go up. Yeah? And we'll sacrifice some acceptability because the corner grocery store will not accept American Express because of the high fees. That's okay, because I only go after HNWIs. And customer experience. We're going to create a whole new segment called customer experience because everybody thinks credit cards is a commodity. It's a convenience. So what's there about customer service? We're going to redefine that whole thing. Then they ask themselves, okay, what needs of the user are yet unfulfilled? What else can we do? This is now pushing for innovation. Pushing for innovation. And they came up with this. Besides customer experience, we are going to create a whole new concept called prestige. So in comes the gold card, the platinum card, the black card. Who would have thought that people would pay $500 for a credit card just because the color is black? Look how much money they make out of that now. And then this is where the bones and nerves comes. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars training every employee on what the essence of the American Express brand were. How do you live the values? And then they tweaked the compensation system so that your bonuses depended on the way you lived the values or not. Values were not just posters on the wall. Huge amount of effort on aligning the bones and nerves. Is it clear to you what American Express strategy is compared to competition? Is it differentiated from competition? As an American Express employee, would this emotionally charge you up? Absolutely. This was done together with HR. By the way, there's still some real estate left on the page. Okay? And you can repeat everything that's been said on that chart in words if you prefer words rather than pictures, but it's the same thing that's said. In one page, we've communicated strategy, we have ensured there's differentiation and innovation, and we have established an emotional connection with the people. This kind of simplicity and clarity cannot happen without HR's involvement. So let's not wait for somebody to offer us a seat at a table. Let's go take it. I have not met a single business leader, whether in the companies that I have worked in or now as a consulting organization, where I say, well, what if we could help you communicate strategy on one page in such a way that you will make sure that there's enough innovation in there, and that you're on top of the market all the time. Would you like to listen? Even the busiest CEO says, yes, I'm willing to listen. You got 5 minutes, your time starts now. And that 5 minutes usually translates to 5 days because once they get interested, oh, HR can help me like that? I had no idea. See what I'm saying? So that's the piece on brains. Yeah? Any questions so far? Anything I made confusing? Simple point I'm trying to make so far is when it comes to brains, if you don't have that emotionally connected mission for your organization, help your senior management get that. If you haven't got a strategy that is A, innovative and differentiated, and B, communicated with such powerful simplicity, you've found yourself a seat at the table. Yeah? Okay. Let's move on to bones. Again, these are the 5 statements that employees should rate a 4 and a 5. 4 is agree, 5 is strongly agree. And again, HR has a huge opportunity to help senior management to make sure that this indeed happens. This boils down to 3 things. Do we have the right people or not? HR does that anyway. Do we have the right internal policies, systems, and structures or not? And do we have the right organizational structure? If you help senior management focus on these statements on a regular basis, you will find opportunities to help them. And over time, senior management should become dependent on HR, not for transactional services, but for running the business, which is what we all aspire to be anyway, right? A few pointers on bones. A very, very dear friend and mentor of mine, Dr. Steve Kerr, some of you may have read his stuff, wrote this article almost 30 years ago called On the Folly of Rewarding A While Hoping for B. A few years ago, he did a update, which was published again. In this article, he showed that company after company, organization after organization, sets up internal policies, processes for good reason at point 1. But at point 10, it starts having the opposite effect. So you start with a policy for hoping for B and rewarding A, it's having the opposite effect. Examples. We all hope for long-term growth and environmental responsibility from our business leaders, right? But what do we reward for? Quarterly earnings. What happens to long-term growth and environmental responsibility if the only reward measure is quarterly earnings? Now, chances are quarterly earnings were set up at a point by the compensation department as a way to measure performance because we needed that urgency for Wall Street. But have we tweaked the system over time? Maybe, maybe not. We hope for teamwork, but we reward individual or siloed effort. I will never forget working for an investment bank a few years ago. In one particular year, there was a big buzz about cross-selling and teamwork and help the other divisions. So I spent a lot of time spent my time helping another division get more clients. When it came to bonus time, I got a low bonus that year. So I asked my boss, I said, why are you giving me a lower bonus than last year? He said, you spent a lot of time outside the department. I said, but you talked to me about teamwork. He said, who asked you to listen to that? And I could go on. This idea of we believe that people should have the right number of people and shouldn't ask for unnecessary extra staff, but yet we pay people based on pay points, which is a manufacturing era job evaluation system that we are still using in many, many places. Well, think again. The world's biggest companies are now created by 2 people in a garage. We are still using pay points to evaluate. Time to think again. And so on and so forth. I could go on. Yeah. So the first step is, if you did that survey of those 5 items, and if people say our systems are not in line, our processes are not in line with reality, you'll get an opportunity to go in and say, let's do something about it. Does that make sense? Yeah. This applies to every walk of life, in not-for-profit, in government departments, everywhere. Very interesting story. In the insurance industry, anybody from insurance here? No. In the insurance sector, until a few years ago, there was a peculiar problem. When people were filing claims, right, the claims processors in the company, they were paying off claims even when they were doubtful claims. So mantra was, if a claim comes in and I'm supposed to process the claim, when in doubt, pay it out. Rather than when it sounds dubious, you should be sending it for further scrutiny, right? Do you know why they were doing that? Any guesses? Think about my performance metric if I'm a claims adjuster working for an insurance company. What is my performance measured based on? Why am I paying even doubtful claims? Any guesses? Exactly. Somebody was trying to some smart HR person many years ago was trying to solve the problem of speed. So the performance metric was number of claims processed in a day. Years later, it became a profitability issue, but nobody had looked at it. So then they found out this was the problem on the folly of rewarding A while hoping for B. I could give you many, many more examples if we had the time, but you get the point. Another humongous waste is leadership development, in my opinion. In my estimate, it's an $80 billion a year global industry, leadership development. Leadership training, leadership development, mentoring, coaching, all that stuff. At least $80 billion a year is what we spend. And yet, you ask people in their career how many good leaders that they've worked for so far, and the answer is either 0, 1, or at best 2. You ask in any company, how many good leaders there are? Handful. $80 billion is being spent on this stuff, and yet we have so few leaders. What are we doing as an HR community? Why are we not challenging the conventional wisdom? We are still using the same old techniques for leadership development in program after program. A consultant like me takes 2 minutes to draw a 2x2 matrix on a chart and starts explaining life in 4 quadrants. The problem with books like The 1 Minute Manager is that they don't tell you what to do in the remaining 59 minutes. Because making leaders is not about formulas. Why is 80 billion being wasted? Why don't we have more leaders? Because we believe all leadership development efforts are based on what we think are flawed assumptions about what leadership is in the first place. This idea that leaders are born on and not made, a lot of people believe that. We have found in our research 0 correlation, absolutely 0 correlation between effective leadership and the biological phenomena of human birth. 0 correlation. Yes, a leader in you is born, but not at the time of your biological birth. A leader in you is born when 2 things happen at the same time. When you feel deeply about the inadequacies of current reality, and 2, when you decide to do something about it. When both those things happen together, a leader in you is born. It's got nothing to do with biological birth. Yet, we use all kinds of instruments and all kinds of tests to see whether you have it in you or not. Leadership is about personality traits. I don't know how much of the 80 billion is spent on psychometric testing. It used to be a cottage industry, and now it's become a major industry, psychometric testing. We bucket people in personality types and then debate for hours in training programs whether you have that leadership personality or not. Again, we have found no correlation whatsoever between any one personality type and effective leadership later on. Because if you think about your favorite leaders that you admire the most, some will be introverted, some will be extroverted, some will be loud, some will be quiet, and yet we obsess with personality testing. 4 letters, an alphanumerical code. Some of these instruments even divide your brain into 4 parts. I don't need to tell you which one. Into 4 colors. We are in India. He had no political office, no military power, no wealth, no scientific achievement, and yet I am yet to find a leader more powerful than Gandhi. Absolutely no connection. But yet most of leadership development is based on flawed assumptions like that. What is leadership? It's not any of these things. Leadership is about finding the energy to create a better future. It's about not giving up in the face of adversity. So the question is, how many of your employees have the habit of closing their eyes to imagine a better future? How many of your managers have discovered their leadership energy? HR can give up those formulaic attempts at leadership development and start putting some of that $80 billion towards helping find energy. More about that over the break if you're interested in knowing what that's all about. That's what the book is based on. Very quickly, I'm being told that my time is getting up, so just a couple of thoughts more. Let's look at succession planning. Again, what are the best practices in succession planning? We have annual spreadsheet discussions, as I call them, at board and senior management level. The board wants to see from senior management, what's your succession plan? So the CEO calls HR and say, come on, do those spreadsheets, we've got to make a presentation to the board. And then we have training programs and some rotational assignment for what I call those spreadsheeters. Board meeting finished, thanks a lot. Okay, HR, we'll see you next year. The so-called very, very best practices are early identification of high potentials and future leaders, and we do structured 70-20-10 development experiences for these so-called hypos. Again, in a world that is changing faster than you can say Jack Robinson, how can you determine today who your hypos are? The whole context will change in 3 years and 5 years. Somebody who looks like a high potential today may not be 3 years from now. What about late bloomers? What about people who have skills for tomorrow that you don't know about today? You cannot look at early identification of hypos. That 9-box grid, which is the holy grail of succession planning, was very good up until the mid-80s and early 90s in GE and other companies. Today, time to think again. So what's the next practice? Let the cream rise to the top. Instead of early identification of high potentials, let the cream rise to the top. What can you do? Instead of once a year spreadsheet discussions, make development goals as part of performance planning. Everybody gives their employees performance goals, right? How about having 2 sets of goals every year? Business goals and development goals. And put your money where your mouth is. If they don't achieve their development goals, they should not get the maximum bonus. Instead of early identification of high potentials, how about equal opportunity for everybody to show their leadership and their initiative? Leadership acceleration programs, which can be in the form of chairman's forums or CEO forums. Anybody that has an idea to improve something in the company, form a team, log your idea. You get a triple bottom line by doing something like this. First of all, your training expenses come down. Only those people who want to do something come in. You solve business problems. You improve revenue. And you got talent development all through. And the board gets a real window into what the talent of your organization is. Yeah. Finally, the nerves. And I'll finish with this. Again, 5 items. Do you have that kind of culture, the winning culture in your organization? And simply, HR must coach senior management in making sure these 5 statements are true. Consultants will have you believe that the hardest thing to do is change culture. It takes a long, long time to change culture. There was an article I wrote for the Mint last Monday, which came out. I respectfully disagree on both. It need not be difficult, and it doesn't take too long to change culture if there is seriousness of purpose at the top. Culture change basically should boil down to 3 things. You define what your values are, and then you socialize those values by role modeling from the top, and most importantly, you align your compensation and your other systems to that. At American Express, 50% of my bonus depended on my leadership ratings, not on my business goal rating. Another 12.5% of my compensation depended on my cut of the employee survey if I managed more than 20 people. Did I take leadership and living the values seriously? You betcha. This is called aligning the bones and nerves with the brains. Not a new idea, but very few companies, even today, are implementing this. Yeah? So if there is seriousness at the top, i.e. walking the talk, culture change is a simple process of these. So keep those consultants out. You HR can do this. It's about, are the senior leaders really serious about walking the talk? If they are, you will be their best friend because you'll show them how to. So Let me skip this because I'm running out of time. What you can do to start with is convince your senior management to do a survey. Put those 15 items on a one-pager. Ask everybody to rate it on a 1 to 5 scale. You can put the results all on one page in a visual way and get a senior management team meeting together to discuss these results. You're going to have such a growth-oriented conversation that will be facilitated by HR. They will never leave you outside the room from then onwards. I promise you that. 65% of a company's stock price is made up of intangible future value, quality of leadership, quality of talent, ability of the company to innovate, employee engagement. 65% of the stock price is based on that stuff. To find out, here's the 7-minute answer. 7-minute survey. That's all it takes to do this, and you can do this as often as you want. You don't need consultants. By the way, all of these materials are copyrighted, which means you have the right to copy them. So if you find them useful, please do so. So thank you for listening to this very rapid-fire set of comments, ladies and gentlemen. Let's embrace the brave new HR, a dependable catalyst that understands the challenges of the flat, interconnected world, and it's easy to do that. A coach to the CEO and senior management team, and facilitator of responsible and sustainable growth through the proactive management of the brains, bones, and nerves of the organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was both inspiring and refreshing.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Pleasure's all mine.
So you will get an opportunity to ask Rajiv questions about his presentation. How many of you found that inspiring? Yeah? How many of you found that refreshing? Yes. How many of you are already looking at how you can implement what he talked about into your own businesses? Great. All right. So we're going to have a coffee break. All right. And then after that, we're going to have a panel discussion on which Rajiv will be a part of. So if you've got any questions for him, anything you want to ask him or expand on some of the things that he talked about, come back from your coffee break with your questions. All right. So it's going to be 30 minutes. Please be back in your seats. It's now 11:05. Please be back in your seats, ready to go at 11:35. All right? Thank you. Okay, I know we thanked the panelists, but I'd really like to